Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe Mikanovsky, product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. In today's episode, Moshe and I are speaking with Dave Martin about the book he co-authored with Andrea Saez called The Product Momentum Gap. So let's dive in. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, hi there. Great to see you, Matt.
Welcome to the show. Hello, Moshe.
Hey, Matt, and hey, Dave. Welcome to the show. And I always start with where you're coming from because I love, maybe I'm a geography, geek or whatever. But that's how I always started. So you're from Bristol, England, right?
That's right. Bristol in England, UK. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. And how is the weather over there now?
Oh, well, it's the southwest of England, so the weather is raining.
Right.
It will be
So you said
every day for a while.
It doesn't matter when that will catch you, that will be the same.
Standard, right?
Pretty much.
Yes. I don't know if we can create products that affect the weather and make it better, but I think that side effect of some of the products that are created in the world are creating global warming. So that's not good, right?
Yeah, not so good. Not so good. I'll keep the rain. It's fine.
Yes.
That's right.
Awesome. So tell us a bit about yourself first before we dive into the book. What's your experience? How did you get into product management? It's always fun to hear those stories. And what are you doing these days?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I've been in product leadership for the last over 2 decades. My background, way back when Windows had NT after its name still. I was a C++ engineer, so that's going back a little bit, a long way. Very quickly, I moved from engineering into managing teams, and pretty quickly started to realize the part I really enjoyed was bridging the gap between technology and the business. And at that point, it wasn't called product management, but it was product management. It was like, what's the business opportunity? What can we do? What's viable? Understanding the technology of what could be cool to do, and how do we do it in a way that's going to make the customers very happy? And that's morphed over time as the product management discipline grew. I grew with it and learned with it. So at least from the UK standpoint, at least, I've been there from the beginning, kind of thing, including some of the UK's stable events and things like the very early days of Mind the Product and Product Tank at the beginning of most of these things. Yeah. So always been there, but my personal focus is product leadership. Today I'm no longer a full-time employee. I run my own coaching and training boutique practice. We focus predominantly on training and helping and coaching product leaders. By product leaders, I mean managers of product managers. Sometimes they're called head of product, sometimes they're group product manager, other times they're CPO. They're the whole raft.
Yep.
But the focus is on leadership. I think there's an awful lot of content and material on product craft, and it's amazing and needed. But I see again and again the challenge isn't product craft is poor or that's not understood. Again and again, I see the challenge that the business isn't able to execute product management. It's not able to execute its strategy, or it's confused to what product management means in the business, or the product leaders aren't able to influence the business and struggling to convince their boss to let them do their job or let their teams do their job, all these things. And none of that is product craft. It's all leadership. It's all about influencing, communicating, getting buy-in. It uses a lot of what's really cool is product leaders have an unfair advantage because a lot of the key things to be a great leader they've learned through product craft, like empathy. So that's a little bit about me and what I focus on. I work with loads of people, loads of product leaders I've worked my sort of product coaching alumni are spread around Apple, Meta, GitLab, and then loads of startups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds like you're still bridging that gap between the business and product. Like where you came from and what got you involved in product to begin with. You're
Mm-hmm.
still trying to bridge that gap because aren't we all in some way?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, Matt. You're right. Yeah, 100% I am. Yeah, I'm just not involved with the technology part of it. It's the people part.
The people part, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and it's also resonate with me because that was I do things much slower, I guess, than you do because that's very similar to my path as well, developer to product management because I wanted to bridge that gap exactly because of that. But it took me 20 years to get there. So it's definitely resonates with me that part. But also what Matt just said that we're still covering that gap, and that gap probably is always going to be there
Yep.
because people coming from different perspectives and different understanding of the world, around them,
Yep.
is one of those things that they cannot know everything, so someone need to help them. Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think of analogies again. I love analogies. So I'm thinking of two sides where the bridge connects, and those two sides are always shifting, right? And so different environments have they start in different places. The bridge has to be in different lengths and strengths and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
Well,
that's
that's
cool.
great to hear. Great, because that means I'm not going to be out of work. So that's
That's right. Yes. That's
None of
right.
us, I think. None of us.
That's awesome.
Well, this is actually the world around us right now is a bit weird about this, the position of product management and how some people are defining it. And some people are like, do we need product managers? We don't need product managers and stuff like that. So that statement, I think, is true that we will not be out of job because but it might be still gelling and shifting towards maybe different direction, but still people will still need to solve this problem of that.
What the key thing for me is the conversation, the challenges, the discipline and the challenges are changing all the time, which is awesome. The bottom line, though, is there's always going to have to be a decision made about value and viability. How do we create value for the customer and how do we make it viable for our business?
Mm-hmm.
The feasibility questions and the usability questions, they are always going to exist, but they keep changing completely. So we've always got those points are always there. Those decisions are always going to have to be made. This for a lot of companies, it's how much effort they decide to put into making those decisions and how confident they are and how they just go with gut reaction and see where that gets them versus how they do things a bit different. And the fact that we don't have standardization, while we don't have certification of product managers, or nothing I would personally recognize, and we don't have standard, there are best practices and preferred approaches, but I'm so keen that they're not certified and not standardized. Because if I look back on my career 10 years ago or 20 years ago, what we thought was the right way to do stuff then, which probably was at the time, it's changed. We do it completely differently now. I don't, if it with, so a bit like that, by not having standards, it allows us to keep innovating at pace. And I'm really keen that we keep that way because I think we're a long way from understanding what good looks like for the majority of cases still. And we've got, and though, like you say, the market and the dynamics keep changing.
Yeah.
How will Gen AI change things? It won't get rid of the job. It's going to change it though. And that's awesome. Great. I mean, if I can do half of it for me and I can do the other half, I can get around to amazing. More abstraction, the better. But it's about that constant journey. And that's kind of where the book comes in, to be honest. It doesn't talk about Gen AI, but it's all about how to execute.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also treating product management as a product makes it a much more agile for us to make changes as we need. So we see what works, what not, and we iterate on it all the time. And that's, like you said, it's make it allow for this innovation to happen. So let's dive into the book. You wrote the book with Andrea, and Andrea was a guest on our show in the past. Unfortunately, she wasn't feeling well today, so she couldn't join us. But tell us a bit, first of all, what is the product momentum gap?
Great question. So the book title is The Product Momentum Gap.
Mm-hmm.
And the product momentum gap is describing a certain point in every product's journey and every product company's journey. And it's a point around scalability and scale. It's that point when you have achieved some kind of good adoption. Maybe you've managed to cross that chasm of Geoffrey Moore's and get to mainstream, but it's within a sub niche. It's within a very tight niche where you're getting true market fit. And at that point, the pressures of growth and scale will force you to expand because you've saturated or feel like you probably haven't, but you believe you have, and your investors probably believe you have saturated that small, narrow niche. And at that point, you go broader. And some companies go broader in a very well-mannered, calculated, careful, experimented way and broaden their product market fit to adjacent niches, and others unfortunately don't do it in such a nice way and end up and you know when you're not doing it in such a nice way because it's where you either launch a second product to go along with your first one and somehow it just doesn't seem to work and you don't understand why, or you're starting to really morph your core product based on customer needs. And I work mainly in B2B. That's where a lot of my time is spent.
Mm-hmm.
And that normally looks like, oh, to close this big customer, we've got to build feature X. And then to close this big customer, we have to build feature X. And that what happens there is that first big customer to get that new growth was actually in a sub niche completely different to all your others. And that second big one, wanting that other feature, is in a completely different sub niche to the one that you catered for yesterday. So what ends up happening is you aren't improving product market fit for a market. You're just, you're still very broad. You're really good in one area, but broad everywhere else. You're not expanding that core area. When you do it strategically, you expand that core area, or you go big one in another place. And a great example is retail. I work with a bunch of customers, a bunch of clients whose target market is retail. And you think, oh, that's one market, that's nice. It's not. It's the needs of a Costa coffee shop or a Starbucks, let's say. Their needs with their retailers have a completely different need to the retail needs of the problems, whether you're marketing or workforce planning or whatever, of a furniture store that works by appointment, not by till queue. Completely different needs, or a supermarket or a grocery store, completely different needs when it comes to marketing and comes to workforce planning, which are two major, MarTech and HR tech are two major technologies that retailers would buy. Totally different needs.
Absolutely.
Completely. Yeah. But they're all retail.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's about recognizing at that point you're in the product momentum gap. The other way of knowing you're in the product momentum gap is you had great growth, things were going lovely, and now things have gone a bit plateaued and you're not really getting hyper growth anymore. You might be getting average growth, but not the growth you expected or wanted to be getting. That plateau is normally because you've started to sell to people where you don't actually have product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
And that always results in slower sales cycles. It results in increased churn, all these negativities, and you don't know you're doing it. The companies that fall into it often are oblivious to it. They don't realize what they're doing because they're seeing, hey, we're still growing year on year, and look at this pipeline I'm building, and look at how exciting it is.
Mm-hmm.
They forget the fact that the first 100 customers bought in a jiffy, really quick, and loved the product, and they're still with them. There was a reason. They were bang on product market fit for those. And the second 100 customers, they were not a bang on market fit.
Mm-hmm.
It's where we've gone wrong. And we need to, that's what the product momentum gap is.
Right. So where do you see usually the problems that are getting companies into this situation that they, is it like quick growth or changing of culture or people, or is it something else, or maybe all of the above?
I mean, there's loads of potential problems, but the sort of generic one is we're not executing the product strategy. And when I end up helping companies, and this has been born out of observation, they'll be able to show me their product strategy, and I'll be able to, if it's a Google Doc, I can look at last activities, see no one's looked at it for over a year, and realize it's equivalent to putting it in the top filing drawer in the cabinet and forget all about it. They're not executing the strategy. They've done the work to think of it, but then they don't execute it. And we end up then, especially when you think about how do we execute product strategy today? What's the most common way? We build a roadmap. And then we get a load of executives to argue about the roadmap. And or we're unlucky and the executives built the roadmap for us and put a bunch of features on it they think we should build. And that's strategy. That's not strategy. That's just an execution plan. That's a delivery plan. It's not strategy. And when we end up in that world, we end up making priority decisions. We put a bunch of frameworks to do it, but in the end, we end up making poor priority decisions, normally made by confirmation bias and collective bias. Confirmation bias being we think it's a good idea emotionally, so we go looking for the data to make us feel good that it is a good idea. And collective bias being the loudest person in the room, it was easier to agree with than disagree, so we all agree. We might leave the room and go, that's a stupid idea, but we signed up for it in the room and we aren't going to challenge it. And the amount of times I see that happen is enormous. Literally get in the elevator and half the meeting is in the elevator going, I don't know why we're doing this. So you just said yes. Why didn't you say that in the room? That's collective bias. And it's a common problem. So that's why we end up in it. We end up making the wrong decisions. And we normally make those wrong decisions because of fear, desperation, and poor leadership. And that's all right. They're human things. That's not a problem. So we need a better tool to articulate product strategy. We need a way of articulating product strategy that doesn't commit us to the solution, which is always going to be, we'll be really lucky if we pick the right solution, especially on a 12-month roadmap. So we want to articulate our strategy where we can be held accountable and the governance of the business can feel comfy, i.e. the board of directors, investors. We need to articulate it in a way we can measure it so we know if we're actually doing it. And we need to articulate it in a way that helps us make priority decisions so we can evaluate whether candidates we've got of things we might do to achieve the strategy, to implement it, are good or bad. And we don't have that typically. We don't typically have that. So that's in the book, we talk about something called the product value creation plan. And that's what the product value creation plan aims to do. It's not a strategy. The product value creation plan isn't a way to build strategy. It's a way to articulate and execute strategy. So the book isn't about trying to teach you to build strategy. There's loads of books to do that. We don't need another one. What we do need is help to actually execute the thing. And that's what this is. And the product value creation plan really goes really makes you think about what is it a product team does that you can measure. And thinking about marketing for a second is quite interesting. If I'm in a marketing team focused on my goals are acquisition, the tools I have is I can build campaigns, and I can put those campaigns on channels, and I can come up with creatives and slogans and promotions in the campaigns. I'm not in January the 1st going to commit to the board what the campaign on December is going to look like and what the text is going to be and what the image is going to be. I might commit to what my media mix spend is, what channels I think I'll spend the money on, and how much money I'm going to spend to get the return, which in a SaaS B2B business is how much money am I going to spend to get the leads. I'm not going to commit to closing those leads because I don't do that. Somebody else, sales does that, not me. I commit to getting the qualified leads. I'll get MQLs, whether it's good or bad, that's what I commit to. And on the journey, if I change my plan, if I had one, I won't get beaten up for it. I'll be celebrated for it. If I learn, hey, instead of spending the money in Google, I've learned I can get twice the leads on Instagram, no one gets upset with me that I changed the plan. Everyone celebrates me. Oh, aren't you wonderful? But because product put that roadmap out, bunch of features, and then we learn they're the wrong features, we get beaten up for changing them, even though we would have wasted money, but we get beaten up for it. And we try and commit to that long plan. We try and commit to the December campaign in January. It's nuts. Instead, we need that equivalent. Now, marketing create an MQL, or this type of marketing we're describing does anyway, creates a marketing qualified lead. What does product create? The more you think about it, it's really simple. We release features. I know we don't want to talk about features because we don't want to be a feature factory, but the truth is, the secret truth we don't want to admit is we release features. What happens when we release a feature? Only one thing happens when we release a feature, a direct impact. That is, a user uses it, we hope. And if they do, their behavior was changed or modified. If it wasn't, we didn't create any value. And if they didn't use it, we created no value. And if their behavior was changed or modified in a negative way, we didn't create value. The one thing we do when we release a feature is we change user behaviors, either new behaviors or we modify behaviors. And you could call behaviors actions as well, if it's easier to think of it. That's what we do. That's what we're in the business of. That's the direct impact. Now, those behaviors have a value chain when they, just like an MQL, we can bring leads into the business on their own. That's worth nothing. If sales can convert them to deals, that's worth money. Lovely. In our world, we can change user behaviors. If those user behaviors are positive, our customers get value. And our customers will then do business with us, whatever our business model might be. That's the value chain. So just like marketing don't directly make the money, we don't directly make the money. We indirectly make the money through user behaviors. So the value creation plan is about helping you identify, based on your product strategy and business goals, what the user behaviors are at a reasonably high level, not too granular, that your strategy is suggesting you impact. When you've got that, you can measure them. You might not be able to measure them exactly, but you can come up with some value indicators that let you measure them. Now we have proper customer outcomes. We can run OKRs off this. We can run teams off this. We can measure it. We can understand. We can evaluate roadmap candidates based on it. We can decide whether we can look and see whether we're successful or not. We can learn from it. We can iterate on it. We can do everything. And even better, we can learn whether our strategy is working. So in 6 months' time, we can go, well, are we creating the behaviors we said we would? And if we are, we can then look at those laggy metrics like revenue and churn and go, well, are they going in the right direction? And if they're not, then we can start asking some really tough questions.
Right.
Was the strategy wrong? Or is there an issue with sales enablement or an issue somewhere else in the business? We can ask good questions. So now our strategy is measurable. It's something we directly impact. And the beautiful thing of it is to decide to identify those user behaviors. It forces alignment across executives involved in the process because it forces you to discuss the assumptions that everybody ignores. To decide the direct impact of those user behaviors, you're forced to discuss the assumptions behind the value. And instead of just going, oh, it would be valuable if we can increase our customers' sales conversions in their marketing campaigns through our wonderful email system. I'm sure it is. I'm sure that's a great value for the customer. Awesome. But the assumptions that aren't discussed is, how are you going to do that? What exactly would we do in our product to make that happen?
Yeah.
That's where the behaviors are without deciding the features. Because there's a billion ways to change the behavior. The team is super empowered. They're wonderful setting a team up to change a behavior is a wonderful guardrail for an empowered team, rather than giving the team a ridiculous empowered guardrail, which isn't a product one of, we want your team to make us another 10% revenue. So they might as well just sell porn or cats. They're going to do that the easiest way. Pictures of cats on the internet. Let's not even worry about your MarTech. I'll do it that way.
Yeah.
That's not viable.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's very cool. And just for our audience, the book does go through all the different steps of using the value creation plan, and it's quite detailed with that, with some examples. And you build that from your own experience. These 20 years of experience got you into, I'm sure, creating. How do you facilitate like workshops and communication with the stakeholders, with the executives, with the product managers and the team to put all of these together, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm brutally honest, the first version of the product value creation plan, which was far from as tidy and efficient and formatted and eloquent as it is today, was my playbook as an executive. It's the playbook I used as a CPO numerous times, and still use, because I do some fractional CPO work now and then. And when I do that work, I still use it. It's how I managed VCs as a CPO, managed upwards to the VC and set expectation instead of a roadmap. It's how I managed private equity investors when I worked for a company owned by a large private equity firm. It's that was my playbook. I started sharing it with other people, and other people started, just at community events and things, and other people started to use it. When I moved into coaching and training instead of being CPO, then I use those tools because it had that validation that other people had picked it up and it worked for them as well. And obviously now I've had the opportunity to work with, I think, probably directly helped 50, 60 companies build a VCP and use it constantly for execution. Indirectly through training programs, way more, and had feedback from hundreds of people telling me about how they're using it. But directly, a smaller number hands-on. There's only one of me, so that's less.
Yeah.
It's much easier in training or webinars. And the aim of the book is to try and make that bigger. Like, it seems to work for these folks. It's helping them be more empowered. It's helping them be less stressed. It's helping them be better leaders. It's helping them manage founders better and help founders be better at product. So the book is there to spread that message, and if other people can find it useful, fantastic. And as you say, step by step, you literally can pick it up and go do it. It tells you how to run the workshops.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, a few questions that come to my mind about this is you explained before, the product momentum gap, and that's usually is already in a growth situation, not in the startup, not before they find the product market fit. But we know that even in a startup, it is important to have a strategy, and it is important to try different things and iterate on them. So there could be a value also for, startups, even before they find the product market fit, to use the VCP, the product VCP to ideate and find ways to measure success eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame Andrea's not on the call with us because she has more experience working with the VCP at that level. But the feedback I've had and the noises I've seen is that the tool is valuable at that pre-seed and early seed stage. And it's used slightly differently. It's used to help formulate those hypotheses and drive the experiments rather than necessarily purely execute strategy. Because normally at that stage, you're a lot more flexible. It's likely that you'll do by going through some experiments and learning, you might throw that strategy away quite quickly and form a new one. And things don't last for quite as long. And it's being used for sure to help people do that faster and more effective, which is the game. At the end of the day, we all want to in product increase learning velocity.
Yeah. But what I do find in startups in pre-seed and seed is that they have the mindset to do it, and they know much more about, especially if they come from a specific problem that they're trying to solve from that area. But the product management discipline or product management techniques are not there for them to do, and therefore, if we kind of catch them when they're young and teach them those and make them start working on them, it will be much more likely that they will continue using them in the long term, I think.
I love that.
That's a bit my theory.
It sounds good to me very much. I don't personally work with that. I typically work with Series A, Series B, or IPO firms. Normally my clients are we're trying to get to 20 million revenue. That's our challenge, or we need to find a pathway to 100 million. So I tend to put my own hands-on experiences into that younger level. I do some work there, like I lectured yesterday at Bristol University to a entrepreneur program being run for some students, and they're at that stage. And we went through simple product discovery techniques and experimentation and how to formulate that. And they were lapping it up and loving it. And already one of them's come back telling me the experiment they ran yesterday, they did it straight away, which is awesome. So I think you're right, totally agree. And the VCP can definitely help there. I just can't speak to it personally as well as
Right.
perhaps Andrea could. She has
Yeah.
more experience at that level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you mentioned earlier, like if you have your main product line, say you're a mid-sized business or a large IPO business, you have your main product line, and you're looking to do additional product lines. This is where this VCP comes in terms of like
Definitely.
don't drift from your core value. Like
Yep.
because I think the larger the company is, the more voices there are, the more competing interests there are. And then
Yeah,
that's where like people start to drift and then recognize like, hey, where am I? Like we're not what we used to be.
but exactly. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's so easy for companies of a larger scale to accidentally decide that their growth strategy is new capability, new market. I'm not sure if you're familiar or listeners are with the ANOFS matrix, but it's where you look at capability existing or new and market existing and new. And very large companies purposefully spend some time innovating in new markets, new capability. That's total innovation for them, brand new. But most organizations, their core investment needs is in how do I take what we're already good at to a new market, or how do I do something new for the market I already am in?
Yeah.
And that's how you've got you can go very wrong just focusing on those areas, make lots of mistakes. And often it's not quite arrogance, but it's the confidence because you've won in one space can accidentally make you make overconfident decisions. We've got to get back to what's the core hypothesis, what's the assumption, and building the VCP helps with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The other question that come to my mind is about the time that it takes to put it together, because it takes time. You have to do all of these different workshops with the stakeholders. You have to either whatever you get consensus or consent, depends on the culture of the organization, et cetera, et cetera. But it does take time, and in some organizations they don't want to take the time. They're saying we already have clients, we need to do stuff for them, and they are kind of hesitant to really stop for a second, breathe, and go through the good, approved process that others have gone through to help them for the future. So how do you suggest organization to deal with stuff like that?
That's an awesome question. I think what we're talking about is executing the strategy you've already come up with. So if you've gone to the trouble and agree and have the culture that you should have strategy, then wanting to be able to execute it efficiently and productively with little waste normally isn't that big a challenge or big a jump to reach. It's normally quite a desire. And normally people have been burnt by going a different route in the past. So to say it's going to take us, not if I'm in the where I get involved and help companies do this, it'll take 2 weeks, 3 weeks max to finalize it if we've got people's time and a few workshops and they've got the right research already in place. If they haven't, it's going to take probably double the time because they've got to get the research. But that period, there's all, like you say, there's other work to do. There's always work on a backlog. There's always bugs. There's always tech debt. There's other things that can be done that are valuable while we're re-strategizing and being clear we can execute. And building the wrong thing for 4 weeks, you didn't lose anything apart from wasting the time. I would rather you fix bugs for 4 weeks and dealt with tech debt while you refocused, and then because that adds value, and then built stuff then focused on building stuff of value. The nature you mentioned where people are like, oh, I've got to go fast, customers are wanting this, that sort of culture and nature, that's normally a business that's super reactive, isn't executing strategy, isn't growing with hyper growth. That's why they're so desperate to fill every little thing, because they're making growth decisions. And normally when you really dissect it and peel it back and look at the economics of the business, which isn't always fun to do because people don't like what it reveals, But normally you quite regularly learn that the SaaS business, and that my clients are often sort of subscription model, they've normally accidentally broken their business model. You know, a SaaS business, as a company, founders want SaaS businesses and investors do, just because the multiple is good on sale. You know, the enterprise value when you sell the business is worth a lot of money. There's only one reason SaaS businesses are worth a lot, two reasons SaaS businesses are worth a lot of money. Subscription means you don't wake up on Monday morning with no revenue. You haven't got transactions, so
The predictability. Yeah.
There's predictability, less risk. The second reason it's such a viable and exciting business model is you write one line of code and you sell it lots of times. And it doesn't cost you lots of money to make the line of code, to resell it. It's not like you make a widget and have to manufacture the widget every time. So after you've sold that one line of code enough times, it's paid for itself, and now it's all pure profit. So it's an extremely lucrative business model when you look at it that way. The problem is that too many organizations with that mindset fall into the trap of breaking their own business model and accidentally becoming an agency, but with the pricing structure of a SaaS business. And what I mean by that is they start writing lines of code that are only going to be used by one client, but they don't sell it based like an agency would on times and material, because that's the only way to profitably make money from selling one line of code to one person. You have to sell them. It costs me this amount of time to make it, so I'm going to have to charge you that plus a profit margin. That's an agency model. But the SaaS model is, I know I can sell it you way cheaper than that because I'm going to sell it to 400 other people, so that's fine. As soon as you start doing work that only one person is using, everyone might have access to it, but if only one person's using it, you only got value out of it from one person, you've accidentally turned your business model into an agency. But you've done it worse because you're pricing it at the SaaS price, normally when you pull it back, you learn that a load of these features that were must-have features to close business, and I've done this with customers, like where, this client was worth 300 grand a year. Of course, we had to build this feature. And you learn pretty quickly that customer is loss leading. They're not even loss leading. It's going to take 5 years to pay back the money, because there was a bunch of costs anyway to run the business for that client and run operational costs. And then we added on £1 million to build this feature that we didn't think was £1 million, but we didn't really track it properly. It turns out it was. And they're only worth 300 grand a year. It's going to take forever to actually make that back. And no one else is buying that line of code. So that normally when you have that reactive nature you just mentioned, I mean, that's a sign to put the brakes on everything, because you're spanking money everywhere and wasting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great way to look at it.
And I've seen companies doing exactly that and losing their way in the process without even realizing this.
No, and celebrating it. The problem is emotionally, it's like, we run this new business and it's a big contract, isn't it good? But when you rip the economy down and go, actually, you just lost money by closing that deal. Then the celebration changes.
Yeah. Perfect. I think that was all the questions I had. Matt, do you have any other questions?
Maybe real quickly, just speaking to product discovery is critical when it comes to any company, big or small. And so that's something that I continuously try to champion and talk about when it comes to implementing this BCP and thinking about creation and value. Product discovery is just so important. And I think people need to keep sight of that when it comes to this, because I think that helps. You have your one product line, and then you want to build another product line. But if you do the discovery, you're going to recognize, I don't need to drift over there. That's not my lane. And so I just want to make that point there.
Great point, Matt. Totally agree. And the discovery is in two places. You've got to build a product strategy, you do need some strategic discovery. We'll probably call it research, but you need strategic discovery at a very high level. And as long as the strategy is dictating outcomes, like a behavioral change as an outcome, it's not dictating the solution, then the product teams have got the space to do the more meaningful discovery, which is get into the nitty gritty and the nuts and bolts of exactly what the feature needs to be in order to achieve that value. And without that discovery, you're just spending money with hope. because you've got no evidence. So product discovery is crucial. I think that I kind of wish there was less feasibility and usability in the product manager's remit and a lot more viability and value. Because that's where, I don't need product management to do discovery for is it usable. That's what a UX researcher and UX designer should do, and a product designer, and they're going to be better at it. I don't really need product to come up with whether it can be built whether it's viable, feasible to build. I mean, engineers are better at that. The only thing no one else can do is it viable and valuable? And that requires discovery. It requires a different mindset of discovery on the experimentations that no one else in the team is doing. And without it, you're going to just keep writing checks. You might as well just write blank checks. You keep writing checks that are never going to deliver a value.
Will it change that user behavior like we talked about?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Getting back to that. So
yeah,
will it, yes or no?
That's it.
Yep.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So the book, again, the name of the book is The Product Momentum Gap, Bringing Together Product Strategy and Customer Value. And it's available on Amazon everywhere, right?
Yeah, Amazon, a load of other places. It's on Audible as well. You can listen to the book. It's fully on Audible. I'm dyslexic and rely on Audible as a book reader or book listener. So I felt
Me
like
too.
Cool. Very cool.
Like we had to put it on Audible.
Yeah, I love audiobooks. That's cool.
Yeah. Where can people reach out to you?
Then reach out to me on LinkedIn whenever they fancy. I'll happily connect. My company website is right2left.io, but I also write a newsletter, which I started in January, which is all about helping leaders with better habits. And that's called outcomehabits.com. It's on Substack, so they can read it for free. You can read it all for free. It'll pop up and ask people to subscribe, but they can read it for free if they want.
Perfect. Amazing.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. This was a very nice discussion. Recommend everyone to listen to it, check out the book, check out the templates, and make that change in the world to create more value.
That's right. Thank you, Dave, for coming on. We appreciate it. Great talking. Moshe, thank you. Thank you to all the listeners, and we'll talk to everybody next time. Take care. Thank you to all the listeners. We really appreciate the feedback and support. Please leave us a review to help others find the show on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else you're listening to the show.